Welcome to Dr. Lottie's Science with Soul, the podcast that transcends the boundaries between science and spirituality. I'm Dr. Lottie, your host, a physician, medical and psychic medium, ancestral healer, keynote speaker, and award-winning author of Med School After Menopause, The Journey of My Soul. This podcast finds its roots in my own extraordinary life experiences. Through my personal odyssey, I have discovered our profound connection within a divine tapestry of existence. I have traversed the realms of illness, healing, and transformation, propelled by two near-death out-of-body experiences that bestowed upon me the extraordinary gifts of clairvoyance, clairaudience, and clairsentience. Guided by this sacred calling, I embraced the pursuit of medical school at the age of 54. Prepared to be uplifted, transformed, and awakened to create a path to healing your own life physically, emotionally, and spiritually by bridging the gap between science and soul. Welcome to Dr. Lottie Science with Soul. I'm Dr. Lottie and the host of this podcast. Today, I am so excited to have a very special guest all the way from Scotland, and his name is Gordon Smith, and he is a world-famous medium. So all you people out there that are interested in mediumship and what mediumship is, tune in because this is going to be a very special episode. So let me read Gordon's bio so that you get a little bit of a background on who he is. With a career spanning over 3 decades, Gordon has been hailed as the United Kingdom's media as the Britain's most accurate medium. And having written successful columns for British newspapers and leading magazines such as the Daily Record, the Sunday People, Best Magazine, Spirit and Destiny, and Take a Break, where he currently has a column dealing with loss and mediumship, there is no doubt that Gordon Smith is the real deal. Internationally recognized as one of the world's leading psychic mediums and admired by his peers, this spiritual teacher, public figure, and author has an impressive 23 books published to date. His last 3 titles were published by leading publishers Hodder and Stoughton under the Crown Imprint, and all were published in both hard copy and paperback. Gordon has earned the reputation as being an authentic, all-round expert in spiritual awareness and psychic studies. Gordon's accuracy as a medium has been subject to several years of testing at Glasgow University by Emeritus Professor Archie Roy, head of the Scottish Society of Physical Research, whose findings were published in 3 scientific journals. So welcome, Gordon. It's such an honor to have you as a guest today.
That just sounds like a whole long introduction, and I didn't realize I had done so many things.
I
But
love
it's
that.
cool. Yeah.
Right? I know it's like, wow, I did all that. I
And
mean,
much
20,
more, Lottie, much more than that.
right? Exactly, much more. And I mean, it's an impressive amount of books. So
Yeah.
how did you end up on this mediumship trail? Did it start in your childhood or how did it come about?
Yeah. I mean, as a child, I had episodes of seeing the future, reporting it to my parents, and they would be kind of blown away. Of course, the future hasn't yet happened, but when it did, they'd think, how on earth is this 7-year-old, 8-year-old boy able to do this? Being Scottish, we are quite kind of oldie worldy. So when I was born, I was the 7th son of a 7th son. Now in Scotland or Ireland, maybe Wales, you would be seen as being a gifted child. You had the sight, they called it. So when I was born, an Irish nurse who delivered me said, "Oh, this one has the sight." So I mean, it's lovely. It adds nice things when I write books that I'm the 7th son of a 7th son. I don't know that it means anything, but for me, a lot of these episodes started when I was a kid, and disappeared for a while. And when I was 21, a colleague of mine in the hairdressing salon where we worked, her brother died in a fire, and the moment he died, he appeared in my bedroom, and that was the first ever experience like that I'd had as an adult. And he was a full-blown materialized person, standing. I can see him now, his arms folded, one shoulder down, smiling in this tartan shirt, and then he just disappeared. And I learned later that morning that he had actually died in the middle of the night in a fire. And I saw him smiling and happy. So that was the beginning of my journey as an adult. I ended up going to a church in Glasgow, spiritualist church. And as soon as I sat down, the medium who was working said, "Oh my God, you're a medium." And I'm looking, who's she talking to? And it was me. And this lady who was a wonderful medium, Mary Duffy, and she said, "Son, in 5 years' time, or maybe just beyond, you're going to be standing where I'm standing now. You're going to be doing what I'm doing, and you're going to travel the world." And I did all of that. 5 years almost to the day I ended up there. And I have traveled almost all of the world as a medium working. So yeah,
Wow,
quite a journey.
what a journey. And when you saw this man standing in your bedroom,
Mm.
how old were you?
21.
21.
Yeah,
And so that's really when things began, but you had these experiences as a
I
child.
had. Yeah, well, at the age of 21, I started to investigate because as a child, I didn't know I was different or that I had something different. Children do something like that and then go and play with their friends in the garden. So it doesn't play on your mind. You don't have logic as a child. You just carry on regardless. Next episode. But as an adult, obviously, it's in your head. You have to go and work it out. So I learned how to try to be grounded in my approach. How can I find out about this? So I worked with Professor Roy because I thought to have a scientific connection was nice. And I found a little spiritual development group in Glasgow run by a Mrs. Jean Primrose. And she taught me how to meditate. And she taught me how to, she said to me, "I can't teach you to be a medium. Nobody can." She said, "But what I can teach you is to be a person worth using mediumship." Now, I find that fascinating. She said, "The gift is there. You don't need to learn the gift. You need to learn how to operate as a good human being, somebody who cares for people. Then your gift actually is a gift." So she trained the man, not the medium.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So now a lot of people, teach mediumship. Do you think
Mm.
that anybody can learn to connect to some degree with the spirit world?
Yeah, I do. I think what it is, Lottie, we all have another sense. But understanding all the senses is important as a medium. So I think we can develop people to a better sense of awareness of the senses. And in that, part of that, you are able to pick up atmospheric, emotions and things like that. And that's where I likened it to a radio. So if it's me and you in a room and I'm sensitive, then I sense your energy, your not just your energy, that word's used too much. I sense the atmosphere around you. So in your atmosphere, you may be feeling nervous, you may be feeling whatever. So I may think, "Oh my God, I feel that." Now, for me, that's like a radio on AM band, near band. But as a medium, you go up to FM. So all of a sudden, in the same atmosphere, I've got your mother. "Oh, your mother's here, and she wants you to know da 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 da." So you're just learning how to work the frequency. And that's really how it feels to me. So I can teach people how to make their mind quiet enough to observe the spirit, not to react. Too many people close their eyes, see something, go, "I got a message." No, we learn how to quieten everything down so that we feel it, the presence, that spirit, feel it. Then pictures will form in your mind. That's your clairvoyance starting. You may have an inner dialogue, which could be your clairaudience. And clairsentience would be how you feel the actual conditions of the spirit being who's now in your atmosphere. So it can be done. And if somebody's got the aptitude to become a medium, a working medium, you will know very quickly. You really will.
So when you work as a medium, so you're talking about clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, um, do you see most of the spirit world or hear it or
Yeah.
feel it, or how does it work for you?
I think for me, the first thing is I get a sense that the atmosphere is changing. So like last week, I was working in Austria. So you've got a translator. So I'm working in English, being translated to Austrian or German. So I feel the change. Somebody's here. So I talk, and then before I know it, for a moment I am the person. I am a mother. My name is Elizabeth. Da 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 da. And then I say that and point to someone. "This is your mother." And they go, "Oh my God." that's my mother. And I'll say, yes. And then I'll hear, but I hear like an inner conversation. Your mother's telling me, but not in my ear. And here, I hear it. And on occasion, I see, I'm not a big clairvoyant, but on occasion, I see imagery or symbology sometimes. Mm. But
Yeah, it's
every message is different, Lottie, no matter who you sit for. I feel it rotates because the spirit are different. Somebody might be really kind of brash on their entry. Others are very timid. So you're having to, if you like, use all your senses to detect how is it best to describe this person. Is it visually? Is it audibly? Is it sensing? So you have to work with all your senses, I would say.
do you have, so you've been doing this for a very long time. Are there any readings that you know remember or that you carry with you in your heart that not only changed your client's life but maybe also affected you, and you know you have fond memories, or there's something that came through for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky that I get to work with people, and I get to healing, if you like, because I think it's the most beautiful thing you take away from a situation is that you see people who are completely broken and they have no other road to walk down. You are the last resort. And I remember being with a couple not that long ago, a couple of years ago, man and wife. They'd never seen a medium, and somebody connected us together, and I remember it took about 3 months before we could arrange this. And when I got to them, I realized why they needed that time was not for the boy in the spirit world to get a message through. It was for the parents to come through enough of their grief to actually hear it. In the very early days, grief such as theirs, it would create a barrier of ignorance that the spirit world couldn't get through. So all of this time elapsed. I got there, gave the evidence that you give to support that they'd lost the boy, his name, all the things, where he died. He didn't die in this country, actually died in Spain. Gave us the name of his little hometown, a little tiny place I'd never heard of, all this wonderful stuff. And the most important thing was for his mum. And there was just this moment where I could feel the joy of the lad letting his mum know I'm not dead. But then he said, Mum, and it was my words, but came out of me, Mum, go home, stop sleeping on my grave. And you could feel it. And the man, her husband, just burst into tears. And that was what he was there for. And his son knew that. And he reported it. Mum, go home, stop sleeping on my grave. And the father said, I want my wife back. And in that moment, I learned such a lot about grief, about loss. And you think, you need to be able to understand this stuff if you're going to work with heartbroken people. So that for me just showed the observation the boy is not dead. He can see what's happening in his mum's life. It gave the lady this sense of, oh my God, if he can see that, he's truly with me. So it kind of warmed me when I left. I could hear the dad as I walked away. I heard the dad and he was kind of laughing and, oh God, it still gets me, laughing and crying as he walked away. And he just said, we spoke to our boy. It was just so real. We spoke to our boy. It was like, yes. And that just filled my heart. I thought, yes, if I do nothing else, I've done a good thing today. So,
Yeah, it's like life changing. I mean, not life
yeah,
changing for the clients, but also life changing for you, because it's,
yeah,
yes, warms your heart as well to see that you can provide
it really
that
does. Yeah.
healing for those people. Um, when I know that in what you've written so many books, so
Yeah.
I don't even know which one to bring up, but
I'm all out of words.
right. So it's but a question that I get often working with people, because I'm a physician, but I'm also
Mhm.
a medical intuitive,
Sure.
and you know why do bad things happen? So you have a book called
Yeah.
Why Do Bad Things
Bad things
Happen?
happen. Yeah.
And that's a question I get a lot too. Why is it that, you know, my husband passed away? Why
Yeah.
is it that I'm struggling with chronic disease? Or, you know, why
Yeah.
do bad things happen? Um, do you think that there is any kind of predetermined or predestined um, part to our lives where we came to have certain experiences? Because it's
Yeah. I mean
difficult,
that,
right?
and again, it's my understanding. It's not law, and I'm not God, but through the work that I do and through the experiences I've had, Lottie, I've come to understand that what we call the bad things, a lot of bad things happen to people when they're not aware of what they're doing. So they don't see themselves walking towards a particular situation. People are going to die, and we have no control over that, really. Up to a point, we don't. So when people die, it's not to harm us. That's not some karmic payback. That's just death. That's the end of a life. As a medium, I see that as a freedom from this world. So I see that as a good thing. They've gone home. So your husband's gone home to prepare something beautiful whenever you arrive. So I look at it like that. But the bad things themselves are the things that we really learn from. And we say bad things, but they're sad things. They can be naughty things that we've done and we know we shouldn't do, but we're human. So to come into this human experience limits us from our spiritual being. So it's the human being that's harmed, the human being that suffers. And I think of the Buddha, just looking at the painting behind me, and talking about ending suffering. So to end suffering means you don't come back here. So we come here to suffer. Now that may sound awful, but in actual fact, if you are a spirit for all eternity and you are completely free, surely you would want to have a go at being confined, contained, held down, individual. Because the moment you go back to that, whole, you're no longer, once you're back in universal consciousness, your individuality is part of a great whole. So this is an incredible experience. And I'm not somebody that does all that happy stuff, and I'm not. I'm a realist. But I do know that the biggest things that have happened in my own life have taught me more than, it's harder to remember some of the happy moments than it is the devastating ones. They're the ones you carry. They're the ones that build you. But you grow, if you are of the type of person, you grow through them, and it becomes a flag you carry and say, look, I can help people because I know what I'm talking about. So yeah, I think it's partly predestined, but I do believe we've got choice. I think we come to junctions of time in our life where you get that, I call it my clash moment. Should I stay or should I go? And you think, and that's yours. So free will has to exist at some point in your life. But there's also predestiny that gets you to the choice of free will. And then free will takes you on another timeline. So instead of going left, you go right. And there are potential endings. I think there are many potential endings. If you stay on path A, you'll probably pass at path B. But if you actually jump the junctions, you'll have a varied life. And I'm kind of glad I've done that.
No, I love that. I love that analogy. It's very similar to my own. I think that it's a combination of free will,
Yeah,
but that certain things are predestined. So for my own
absolutely.
near-death experience, I've been told that it's in my astrological chart.
Yeah.
And there's certain patterns that they can see, and with people that have those experiences. So,
Yeah.
part of our life must be
Oh,
predestined, or we
you
signed
never.
up for it. But then we got the free will. What am I going to eat for dinner tonight? I probably have
Yeah.
free will. But right. Or, if you marry this person, or if you marry that person. But
Yeah.
I think it's different. It's just different for different people what
Yeah.
is predetermined to have certain
And I
experiences.
also
And
believe, though, the more you grow consciously. So in this life, if you believe that you've consciously grown, and I love your dog, um, I'm such an animal person, but if you grow spiritually, not so much spiritually, but consciously, and you start to become more aware, I would imagine that you have a little bit more say in how you predetermine episodes in the next life. If we are to understand karma correctly, who we are now is a result of what we've done before. So if you like yourself now and you feel your life's okay, you've done something to achieve that. It didn't just happen. But that will equally grow into something totally different the next time. But you've already risen to a level of karma that unless you create bad karma or pick up some really daft things, you're going to be there and you have a choice. And I believe that's how it happens. Whereas when somebody's very closed, they run into things all the time. Why do bad things keep happening? Because they don't learn from it. So people stay on the same wheel, that wheel of life, and keep saying, one of my colleagues in the hairdressing is a world where you learn everything, Lottie. It really is. One of my friends there, she kept marrying really bad guys. And at some point I said to her, are you sure that, it's the men that need to learn? What do you need to learn? Third bad marriage, aggressive men who harm you. you need to start looking at your role in this, because these men are just attracted to you. So you need to change you. And she did. She learned. So again, that might be something she never needs to experience again. But she had to experience it until she actually said, enough. I need to grow from this. And I think really life's like that. Learn your lessons, grow from them, and then enjoy.
Yes. You mentioned karma as well, and
Mm,
what that pattern and the energy that keeps coming back. I mean, it's a lot that I work with in ancestral healing, and
yeah.
the people that came before us, the people that come after us, and the patterns and the energy that repeats are at times very karmic, right? It's
Yes.
like the emotions, the unresolved patterns and issues
Yeah.
of our ancestors, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, aunts, and uncles. And sometimes it's the same pattern when I work with people that you point out, you have this pattern, you married or you're attracting to these people. Tell
Yes.
me about your mom. Who was she attracted to? Oh, your
Exactly.
dad was the same thing. Oh, tell
Exactly.
me about your grandma. And the
Yeah.
pattern is just, it's almost karmic that it
Yeah.
comes back.
Do you know that it's almost like there's a spiritual DNA that our finer body carries. And that's why we're attracted to our parents. That karmically, or if you want to call it some kind of spiritual chemistry or DNA, attracts us to types so that we can actually have the experience we're aiming at. In Tibetan Buddhism, for instance, you are attracted to your opposite gender parent for your lessons in this life. I don't know if you were aware of that, but so you would be attracted to your father
Mhm.
to come in to learn lessons from him. Not that you won't learn from your mum, but he would be the light that drew you. For me, it would be my mum. My mum was a very tough woman. I was a very sensitive, weak child. So when I look, I learned strength from my mum. My dad was a kind, compassionate man, strong enough man, but my mum was the strength, and I had to learn to toughen up because I was too sensitive. So I realized I needed a tough parent who could protect me, but also who I could learn strength, how to be strong. So I look at that and think, wow, and many other DNA things that I would have picked up from both parents. But I'm sure that there's a spiritual DNA that travels karmically with groups of people.
I love that. I love the spiritual DNA. I always
Yeah,
have,
I do.
I call it the grid, the invisible grid.
Yeah,
Think quantum physics. We are connected to our ancestors,
we are.
whether you met them or not in your life. They could have passed before you were born. It
True, Lottie.
doesn't matter.
Do you know one of the things I found out really that told me that? I went to a little island a few years back off the west coast of Scotland, an island called Mull, and there's another one called Iona. And these are two very beautiful old islands. I'd never been. And as soon as I walked on to Mull, I thought, oh my God, I literally connected to the ground. I thought, this is my home. I've been here. And I didn't know, was this a past life? No, no, no. What is this? We did some research, and both my great grandparents were born on Mull and Iona. And going back, all generations of my family lived there and were artists, crafts makers. And I do arts and crafts in this life. And I think, oh my God, you even feel the connection to the land that you've been in or your family have been in. So there's something special about that, going back to a land that was once occupied by your grandparents, great grandparents. And again, it told me there was marked stains of their spiritual DNA there that lit up when I went onto that island.
Absolutely. I hear you. Because
Yeah,
that, you're connected to that. It's all part
absolutely.
of who you are, but we can't quite put our thumb on it because we don't really have the
No.
science to back up or prove it, but
But you
we
know, I think we
know.
will soon. You're medical, Lottie, aren't you? So you're
Yeah, I'm a
medical, but
physician also.
I believe that, I mean, and Spirit have told me many times that the new science going forward will all be to do with consciousness and the study of consciousness. And I totally believe that it will be, because consciousness is the undiscovered country, really, in science. And it needs to lose its religious stigma and actually be something that's universally open and not seen as woo-woo. It's actually something that should be practiced and taught, to be conscious. And consciousness is a growth of every action you do and take. And then if we taught children that and they realize very young their actions had consequences, it's pure Buddhism, Buddhism 101, but for children. the world would be a much better place very quickly.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. How do we, I mean, that's part of my work is to, bring awareness to,
Yeah,
when we talk about healing people, it doesn't matter if it's
no, it
grief,
doesn't.
or if it's chronic illness or,
It doesn't. Yeah,
right? Because we are not just a physical being, and Western medicine will
no.
just give you medications, which
Yeah.
are good. And it allows
Yes, of
people
course.
to continue working and not feel pain and all those things, but you're not going to heal it.
No,
In order to heal it, you have to work on all different levels because we are so much more than just a physical body, which
absolutely.
which
And
you just proved. But
that's the, well, again, that for me, as I grow older, and hopefully a little bit wiser, I realized that the messages that I gave had to be loud and in people's faces, accurate, real names of people, streets, towns where they were born, houses they lived in, all that stuff would come, and various other things. And I realized it was almost spirit's way of doing a propaganda meeting to get people to come in. But then you start to do the deeper work. The message is just the sign that says come in. But then the message has to go deeper. And you have to say, who am I? How did I get here? Why am I here? What is my purpose? And so on and so forth. And then these different departments of your mind begin to open up slowly to the light. And that's the true journey. So as I get older, I feel my work is touching the more spiritual parts of consciousness. And I do less and less messages these days and more teaching. And I feel I can reach more people by saying to them, you can't die for the life of you. As simple as it is, but your life force will go on. And when you know that, you lose your fear of living, and to lose that fear of living, lose your fear of dying, but then that means that you will lose your fear of living. So lose the fear of death and you lose the fear of life. And that's the whole idea. We don't die. We can't die for the life of us.
yeah, I know you also wrote books about animals, and I want to make sure
I
we
did.
touch on the animals as well.
Yes.
I know you wrote two books about animals,
Yeah.
and let's see, one was Animal Magic,
Yes.
and the other one was another book you wrote earlier, Amazing Power of Animals.
They're
So,
actually the same book retitled years later.
so tell me, do you often get animals coming through when you do a
Yes.
mediumship reading, and do they give you a message or feelings? Is it
Yeah.
the same way that you get a message from a person? Do they also
Yes.
convey messages? I love the way you gave me this kibble, or
Yeah.
yeah.
Y- I mean, it depends on the medium. Like for myself, you tend to want to start a reading with tuning into somebody who's passed. But often I've started to, I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to tell you, there's a Rottweiler sitting at my side, and somebody will go, oh my God, it's my dog. And maybe I'll pick up the name of the dog, its name was whatever. And then you would carry on and say, oh my, the dog is making me aware, not telling me, the dog is making me aware that you lay beside him before he died and you held him and you told him it was okay to go. And I'll hear her words she gave the dog. And she, oh, that was the last conversation we had. And I think there was a lovely one recently with an old gentleman in Switzerland where he tracked me down for God knows what. How I got there, I don't know. And I sat with him and I assumed elderly man. This is your logic comes in, probably lost people close to da, 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 da. You don't want to think like that. But immediately it wasn't. It was a beautiful, tall Weimaraner dog. And I said, you've lost a Weimaraner dog. And his name is Pongo. And the man just cried. And I said, he's here. And he tells me you've built a memorial to him in your garden out here. And he said it arrived yesterday. And I said, the dog's really happy. Well, that you could have given that man anything. Nothing would have been worth what he just got in that message. And he said, it was my fault. I said, it wasn't your fault. Your dog was killed by a train, but it wasn't your fault. And he said, you know that? I said, no, the dog knows that. The dog's fine. The dog's absolutely fine. It's not heartbroken, anything. That's the body. The spirit is free. And he's like, how can you talk to dogs? I says, I don't. They talk to me. It's a different thing. But yeah, there's a sensitivity, a connection you have because I love animals. So animals are safe around me, even in the wild. So
Wow, that's such a great story. And So when you do readings, do the animals just like spontaneously show up and say, "Oh,
Yep,
here, there's a little white dog here."
yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be anything. It can be, as I say, it can be mid-reading. You're reading for somebody who's lost a son, and you say, "Oh, there's a little golden terrier beside him," and you go, "Oh, he's got the dog." Yes. So again, but why would it not when you think that all living beings are consciousness? Consciousness, when this physical consciousness shuts down, the spirit has to go somewhere. And animals that have connected to you with a bond of love, that same bond of love is what pulls you together. And when we die, we get drawn with that bond of love to the people we've loved, genuinely loved here, and that's really what it is. We'll go right back into that beautiful connectivity again with people, animals, anywhere we've felt love as a home for our spirit.
Yeah, this is so amazing. I know that animals do come through,
Oh yeah,
and it's just fascinating because it's so heartwarming. I mean, and also proves the survival for
yeah.
people who are skeptics and are not sure. They're doing their first reading and they're not
Yeah.
sure. Um, so, what was my next question? There's so many things I want to talk about.
Oh, anything at all.
But for the mediumship. So I know you
Mm,
also wrote a lot of books on mediumship and how to do that. So for people who are listening, that are thinking, I always wanted to learn, I always wanted to connect with my loved one, my child, my partner, my mom, or
mm,
whatever in the spirit world. I know you wrote several books on that as well.
I did.
Um, do you have a favorite book to recommend to
I
people
do.
who will want to?
I think where there's a teaching book, probably Intuitive Studies, but probably my favorite book on mediumship is The Unbelievable Truth. It was the second book that I wrote for Hay House, and it's been probably my best-selling book. It's, it just keeps selling because there's a lot of logic in it and clearing up misconceptions. A lot of people are afraid to go towards mediumship because of stories they've been told, misconceptions about what mediums do. Often when I was very young in my 20s, late 20s, and going on television shows and things, and sometimes I'd travel with maybe an older friend, a woman, nobody ever assumed I was the medium. They always assumed my friend who was going through the menopause looked more like a medium than I did. She was always hot and bothered. And people used to say, "Oh, you must be the medium." And she'd say, "No, it's him." Because that was their idea of a medium, a middle-aged woman or an older woman. And so for me, it was great to be so grounded and teach people, look, not everything you say about mediums is true. You got to do your research. Got to be a bit grounded with all of this as well. Don't just go off the planet. Keep grounded, but let your heart search for the spirit world. And I think I loved, and I still love Unbelievable Truth because there's a measure of logic that keeps people balanced. There's a lot of reality checks in it, and I think we need that when we're on any spiritual path. Time to stop and pause and say, "What am I doing? Am I still on the right track?" So yeah, definitely The Unbelievable Truth, I would say. Good book.
Well, that's great. And do you teach for people who would like to learn mediumship? Do you teach mediumship? Do you have
Yeah,
online classes or in-person classes?
I do. I do lots of online classes, which people could probably find on my website. But I also work for a company in Switzerland called Unity, and we run an online academy. And that academy, basically, it's teaching you from the start, from the very nothing thing, just how to sit and relax. Because a lot of people go and try to be a medium and they don't know how to relax, and they actually are agitated. So you have to get them past that. Forget meditation, get relaxation. Then we teach them how to meditate. Then we teach them how to self-process. Because if you're a medium but your head's full of anxieties, your own anxieties can spill out into somebody's message. So this is where Mrs. Primrose taught me: heal the guy, fix the guy. The mediumship will come out authentically if the man is balanced. So I do teach things like that, and then I'll teach them what a message. What's the worth of a message? A message is healing. You're not there to predict the lottery numbers for people. You're not there, unless that is your path. I don't know, but for me, it's never been. It's always been to heal,
Yeah.
to bring balance and healing to people, and also give them that knowledge of life after death. life after this death, that life will go on and on and on. So it's very hopeful. So it's again teaching people the right way to tune in. Why are you doing it? Are you doing it to impress people, or are you doing it to help people? So I like to again be as balanced as I can when I teach.
Yeah, I love the when you said it, to get the right lottery ticket, or
Yeah,
but there are people that think that
yes,
mediumship is that.
no,
Um, but it's all about the healing between the
it's
client
totally
and
about healing.
the person that's coming in the spirit world.
Yeah.
Um, when you work, do you the spirits just come in, or do you often get people saying, "Oh, I'd like to talk to Bob," or and
Yeah.
do you or do the spirits choose who's going to talk to them, or do you then say,
Yeah.
"Hello, Bob, are you there?"
Well, I've been trained that I will work first of all with my own spirit guide. So I'll feel the presence of my guide, and then I know it's okay to work. If I don't feel him show up, no reading. That's it. Not doing it that day. So when I feel the presence of spirit, then I think we're on, okay, and then I allow them to control who's coming through. So people may come. I mean, I've had in my life so many people who have asked me to sit and bring through celebrities such as Elvis, Princess Diana, Michael Jackson, Freddie Mercury. Go on and on and on. And unless you actually have a direct connection to them, mediumship won't work. If it did, it would be very limited. Um, it's that loving bond that makes mediumship work, or unfinished business. If there was, if people died in an argument, I remember reading for a gentleman in Germany, and he and his wife died in mid-fight. The wife died while they were fighting, and he brought. I did the reading. Obviously, it was sad as well, but he needed to conclude this to let him know how his heart felt, that he didn't mean to hurt her and things. And so there's got to be a good reason for it to work that well. So just saying, "Oh, let's bring in JFK," that's not going to work. If you had a couple of Kennedys in front of you, you might have a chance.
That's a great explanation, because I feel many times people think when they talk about mediumship, they think it's like a cell phone connection,
I know.
and it's like dial the number and
Yeah.
I'm going to call Bob in the spirit world, but it
Yeah.
it doesn't work that way. And so it's always so nice to have
Yeah.
well-respected people like you to explain that to people, because
Yeah.
I feel also that people don't really understand
No.
sometimes what mediumship is, and you explained it so well. It's all about the healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in my world, I don't. When people say to me, "Could something negative happen?" No, I've done this for 40 years of my life, almost 40 years. Never once have I come across anything like that. I've seen people who are afraid. Spirits are not stuck anywhere. Nothing like that happens. This is all Hollywood, and it's all very, Stephen King and things like that, books and ideas. In reality, we die and our energy just goes. That's it. We're off. The memories we leave behind are the hauntings. I have a famous saying: "There's no such thing as a haunted house, just haunted people." If you remove the people from that house, it's fine. You may have an atmosphere, but no, spirits don't get stuck in houses. People do.
Right. So about haunted houses, when people get, there's
Yeah.
abnormal activity happening, things are falling off the shelves in the kitchen. And is that a spirit that's visiting, or a spirit that's just hanging out in this dimension?
No, I don't think it's anything to do with spirit at all. I think, if anything, if it's real activity, things falling off shelves in kitchens is gravity. Things jumping onto shelves, that's paranormal activity. So I actually did, with the professor at Glasgow Uni and some others, we went to many of these cases, and the people genuinely were afraid. We didn't go in and poo-poo their ideas or what they were experiencing, never. We went in as healers, but we always found a logical explanation. As a medium, I wanted phenomena, but it was all psychology, most of it. And you could understand why, because when fear begins to build in a house, now that's what you're aiming at, not a spirit. It's the fear, the anxiety becomes tangible. And that's where you'll get telekinesis and things like that from. We call it poltergeist, but once again, it's misrepresented, that word. A poltergeist is not a noisy spirit. In German, poltergeist means noisy mind, not spirit. So your geist is your mind. So it's a disturbed mind, a poltergeist. And that's really what happens. And it happens a lot when, one of my famous quick cases was, a family who had split. When the dad left, hauntings happened in the house. The little boys were seeing men standing in the room at night. The mother was terrified because the children were terrified. Her fear then infused the children, and fear just grew. And then they started to back up each other's stories. This thing lifted and flew. The boy levitated. None of that happened. But in their heads, it did, and they believed it. And the moment we were able to dial it all back to what had actually happened, they wanted there to be a man in the room. They were missing their dad. It was the absence of a man. And we worked with psychologists as well as mediums, which I'm very proud to say I was allowed to do, because we worked as a collective to help people, not create phenomena. My job is to take fear away from people, not add any it. So I'm a safe medium when it comes to things like that. I'll take away anxieties and fears. I'll never add them.
And so when people die, do they, in your world, do the spirit go straight to heaven, or is there something called like the in between that you have to help the
Oh.
spirit get to the other side, or do you feel like they just get to the other side?
Do you know, Lottie, I think everybody has their own idea of heaven. So for some, heaven would be to meet their husband. For some, heaven would be to meet their parents. For some, heaven would be in a place in the country, in a palace, whatever. We all have an idea of heaven. For me, I am more Buddhist than anything. So for me, it's just a change of state. I change my state to the next state. That's it. It's a bardo. You go through another thing. But there'll be a death experience. And the death experience will be a quickening. Some people, if you've ever had a near death experience, it's like going through a tunnel of light. They say, no, it's speeding up, speeding up, speeding up. So your vibration is quickening, quickening. The brain, while it's still connected, picks it up as traveling, because it's the only thing the brain can do with it. Where am I going? You're not actually going anywhere, you're going out. You're going faster, 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 faster. So that's what happens as we start to die. And then there's a moment when the death experience, as you leave the physical world and the brain shuts down, then it's it would be the equivalent of having a beautiful out of body experience. So you would emerge like a butterfly from a chrysalis. That's what it would feel like. All of a sudden, the small world you occupied, which you thought was everything, is down there and you're up there looking. That's the experience, that transformation of chrysalis to butterfly is human consciousness to spirit consciousness.
That's a
An
great
absolute
analogy. I love that.
sense of liberation. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
because it's really, I mean, yeah, because when you're outside the body, you have access to everything.
everything. Yeah,
It's just so different because the
yeah,
body, we're just in this little tiny compartment, but it's
yeah,
like a chrysalis. Such a good
exactly.
analogy. And the butterfly coming out and
Yeah,
seeing all the other things that he couldn't see when he was in the chrysalis. That's
and
very much like
so
how I
whenever I
see
look at
my
somebody
life.
suffering, I look at when my dad was dying, and my dad wanted me to be with him for the last week, which I did. Another wonderful honor in my life to sit with your father. The man who taught you not to be afraid when you were a wee boy. He taught you how to tie your tie and tie your shoelaces, tell the time. And here's this man who was strong, and all of a sudden you are caring for him. And because of what I do, he loved that I could talk to him each night, and we would walk together. And I'd say, "Come on, just keep walking, Dad." And one night I said, "You're just going to go." And he said, "I know, son, I can feel it." He says, "I'm not afraid of this." And I said, "Good for you." And that was a beautiful thing to do, because, and my dad was very crippled with his joints and things, so he couldn't move. And I just had this beautiful vision as I left him of him just like the butterfly, and that all that pain dissolving back to the earth, and him just liberated and free, just heading to wherever, well, heading on, call it that. There doesn't need to be a heaven as a station, or an in-between place. You travel on, in the words of Albus Dumbledore from Harry Potter. Where are you traveling? I'm traveling on. And that's really it. Travel on.
I love it. Another common question that people always ask,
Mm,
if people are bad people when they're here on earth,
yeah.
do they go to hell or do they go to heaven? Are they okay on the other side? What do you have to say to that?
Well, again, if people are bad. People are bad to each other, and it's only in this form we can be bad. So it's the most dense realm. We're dense. So, and when we do dense things, so when somebody who's died, who's done bad, they're going to have to see not what they've done, not just what they've done, but the effect. So the whole karmic chain, you know, it was like one lovely old gentleman I helped, his daughter killed herself after her husband was murdered in the street in Philadelphia. And the man very bravely went to the prison to speak to the guys who killed his son-in-law, and then eventually forced the daughter to kill herself. And he sat and he told them everything that had happened to his family since that death. And these men, young men, he said they were just crying. He said, but I had to do it. And I think he started a whole program of parents of, you know, victims of crime going into the prisons. He began all this, and it was just this thing he had to tell them. You didn't just kill one man. You've destroyed a family. So from the other side, that butterfly experience, wonderful if you haven't left some really bad garbage behind. You're going to see that, and that will affect where you're going on. Now, I don't give hell any credence because I think that's a religious idea and it's made up. But I think a heavy conscience. You know, if you've done something, Lottie, and you think, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. And that's just a little thing. Imagine you could see the effect of something bad you'd done. Your conscience would become so dense, like a boulder, like a stone. And therefore, that is what you're going to have to work through from now on. How do I, well, what would that look like if it was born again? Think about it.
Right. Yeah. So do you believe that we reincarnate?
I think I just said that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. And I
And do
do
we
because
bring that, you know, the experiences from our past lives with us? If we were a bad guy in past life, then we come
well,
back, do we
I
then?
think, well, I think that's the thing. You are an accumulation of your karma. So you being born where you were born, the life you're living, and that you've done something good before. You may have done something bad before quite a while back, but it looks like you've worked it out. So you look at things like that. People can have good karma because they've been kind and generous and whatnot. And then that improves, that lightens the load. So the conscience lightens, lightens, lightens until it can house itself in a better life. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance causes so much damage. And this is why we're trying to wake people up. We're trying to let people enlighten enough so that they don't keep doing these things. And letting people see that one action you did by hurting one person, you've destroyed a family. I mean, so, but that is somebody who's spiritually closed, spiritually ignorant. So it's opening their spirituality, which that lovely gentleman from Philadelphia did. He went in and said, look, this isn't even payback or punishment. I just need you to know the full responsibility. So if you're on a spiritual path, you have to take responsibility for your karma. People who are not, they'll make mistakes all over the place. And in a world like this, they will cause things. But they will become a very distorted version of what they were before in another life. And they'll have no option. They will be pulled in through the wheel of samsara. They just come straight back in again. So no time, just back in. And a mass of whatever your own creation is. And if that's vile, that's vile.
Mhm. Well, it's been a pleasure. I know we're going on like 45, 50 minutes now. So
Yes. I have totally
but,
enjoyed it. Just being able to talk freely is so nice and relaxed.
yeah, it's been a great, it's just been
I've
such a
loved it.
lovely to have you on the podcast. I
Anytime.
want to make sure you get your information out, how people can find you and work with you and take your classes. Do you have a website?
My website is I can't remember my website.
Is it Gordon Smith Medium?
GordonSmithMedium.com. Yeah, www.gordonsmithmedium.com. I am hopeless. I'm the worst self-publicist. Honestly, I forget everything I do. So I think that's my website.
We'll make sure to put it in the podcast
Sure.
notes
No problem.
and so that people can find it. And you know, go check out all his books that he's written. You know, just fascinating the amount of information then that are available in the books that you wrote about everything, how to be a medium and what is the spirit world like, and the animals, everything. So it's been such a pleasure to have you as a guest on the podcast today. Is there any particular message that you would want to give to the listeners?
Yeah, I think so. And I think really it's about getting above your fears. one of the biggest hurdles we have in this life. Fear is the greatest cancer known to mankind, or womankind. It's something that we should look at from a distance and say, why am I afraid? That's not your experience here. See it from a higher perspective, and just think, being afraid just means you're lacking love at that time. So find the love, because everybody has that. Look for love and get rid of fear.
That's great. That's a great advice, because that prevents a lot of people from following their path, which often comes from childhood and the incarnation and the karma and the ancestors,
Yeah.
right? We talked about
Yeah.
earlier. But to find that path within themselves and heal their own lives, so they can go on and do the things that they incarnated to do
Absolutely.
in this life.
Yeah.
So again, it's been a pleasure to have you as a
Thank you.
guest. Thank you so
You're a
much for your
star.
time.
Thank you very much, Lottie. It's been an absolute honor.
As we conclude this episode, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude for your presence within our community. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with friends and family. Subscribe to my newsletter in the show notes and receive new podcast episodes delivered right to your inbox. If you resonate with the interconnectedness of mind, body, and soul, and are motivated to embark on a journey of personal healing, I invite you to connect with me at drlottie.com. Together, we can pave a path towards transformative healing in your own life.